Is it healthy for you?
I don't know.
Hello. Today we're going to try to cover two things, both kind of based off of comments or things people requested. So someone had asked that we talk about crate training and like the steps to take on how to properly crate train a dog. And then we were also going to revisit the topic of a little bit of what we touched on last week, where but coming at it from the perspective of kind of the societal pressure that exists on how people expect your dog to behave or be, like when you're out in public with them or things like that, and how owning a dog who doesn't perfectly fit that mold of like the perfect tolerant dog, it can be either embarrassing at times, it can be like hard to assert yourself or different things like that. Mm-hmm. Do we want to start with just the crate training, since that one's a pretty easier one to go with? Do you guys think that do you pretty much approach crate training the same no matter the dog, the issues, the age, or do you have different techniques that you use?
Okay, I'm sorry, what was it?
So we're talking about crate training,
yes.
And Michelle asked, do we approach crate training the same with breed, size, age, etc.?
Yes.
Like when you're instructing a client on how to utilize the crate or have a dog be conditioned to be able to be tolerant of the crate?
I mean, I think with a puppy, obviously being younger, it's introducing that to them the first time. I think it goes a little bit smoother. I think in terms of like the order in which I teach dogs, I do it the same. Sometimes it just takes longer in certain periods of that teaching point for the dogs. But, with a dog who's a rescue or they used to crate train and then they stopped crate training, and so when they try to go back to it, they're like fighting a little bit more. Mm-hmm. Obviously that takes a little bit more of like convincing and kind of working through that, because they've had that opportunity to kind of fight back a little bit, and whether the owners just get sick of trying to fight them every time, or the dog gets redirected and they start like making the owners nervous, then I feel like it goes to those like small little wins for the dog, where it's like, okay, this is all I have to do to fight them from trying to get me in, and then I don't go in. So like that's a win for me. Whereas like with a puppy, it's like you're doing it for the first time, you can be a little bit more like convincing with it, I think. But especially bigger dogs, obviously, there is that more of a fight, but
And getting them in and out of the crate and conditioning them to get in and out smoothly.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think you gotta be patient with small, even like a small dog where you could probably just like toss them in, you know what I mean? Like you don't, obviously that's not going to be a beneficial, routine for them. So yeah, I think in terms of like teaching it, size, age, whatever temperament, I think it's all the same for me in terms of it. Obviously with like a bigger dog though, you might have to put a little bit more resistance into it as opposed to the same resistance of like a small dog. But yeah.
I think crate training is something a lot of people realize, like they'll do it and then the dog will not like it and they're like, well, my dog didn't like it, so I don't have to do crate training anymore. Mm-hmm. Or crate training is not supposed to be 100% easy all the time. You're going to go through a phase, especially with like Pipsqueak, my puppy, where there's a lot of screaming in the crate. Mm-hmm. And that can be the difficult part. It's like sleep training a baby and getting a dog conditioned to be in a crate and have cool, calm energy in there. So it can be a process. So when I'm teaching clients to do that, I let them know that there are times where it might be a little bit of a struggle. I make sure the dog, like we were just talking about, can get in and out of the crate smoothly. Mm-hmm. Maybe we'll add a command in with getting them like crate or kennel, and then getting them equipped to being comfortable in the crate for extended periods of time.
Yeah, I think initially it's like a big piece of the puzzle is like the association around being like in the crate and what your ultimate goal is for using the crate, and making sure that like to me it's mainly just a management tool. And I think that's strictly what it should be. Some people use it for like timeouts when the dog's in trouble, or things like that, when in reality the crate just needs to be a place that is safe for your puppy, that you can put them or your dog, and that's going to help you manage their behaviors like overall. And I think the biggest thing that makes crate training easily go south is, again, not prioritizing like the overall association with the crate being like calm, like a calm place. So, and some dogs are gonna be more receptive to that than others, and sometimes it'll take a little bit more work. But like with puppies, I'd say like if you're gonna start with a puppy with crate training, like Snoop for instance, the best thing you can do is like literally the first day you get your puppy, you're working on crate training immediately.
Yeah.
So like I literally drove home from New York with my Chihuahua puppy. And as soon as I got home, one of the first drills I did with him, because he slept the whole way home, he was ready to go, was just crate training drills, getting him comfortable going in and out, in and out, in and out. And I did use food for that initially because I was pretty food motivated. And I didn't ever close the door on him when I was practicing those things. It was just getting him comfortable going in and out. He even took a little nap. I had his crate inside his like little pen that I had for him while I was supervising. And after he ate a little bit, played, whatever, he even went in the crate on his own and just kind of like took a little nap in there, which was great. And then I did some drills closing the door and doing short periods, like 5-minute periods for the rest of that day, getting him used to that. And then overnight, he just was in there. If he whined, if he barked every once in a while, I think he did maybe for like 5 minutes, he whined a little bit and barked and all that kind of stuff. And I just ignored him, knowing that he had gone to the bathroom. He didn't have to go to the bathroom. There was nothing in the crate that he could have peed or pooped on that, you know, would have made it easy for him to do that. There was no toys in there. There was no food. There was no water, you know, anything like that. It was strictly just like, we're in here to relax and go to sleep and just do your own thing. And then set alarms, you know, to take him out and stuff. But I think that you need to incorporate a crate into your routine immediately.
Yes.
Or else then it's going to be much more difficult.
Yeah.
If you bring your puppy home and you're like, oh, well, I'm just going to sleep with them on the couch for the first week and get up so I can take them outside and do all this kind of stuff, it's going to be disastrous if you try to then go to a crate.
And then people will stop because they're like, it's not working, the dog doesn't like it. And it's like, you have to build that association like you mentioned.
Yeah.
And like as I'm lurking through TikTok comments or of other trainers or our own page, one thing I'm always seeing is like, why would you crate your dog? That's evil, that's mean.
Yeah.
And people just have this like association that creating your dog is wrong.
And maybe that's another societal pressure, honestly. Maybe these two themes do mix together a little bit.
It's honestly the safest place for your dog to be.
Yeah.
Is in a crate.
Oh, 100%. All of my dogs get crated still when I leave my house. And they're like, the two oldest are 9 and 10.
Yeah.
My oldest dog before he passed away was almost 15 and he was still being crated when I left. Like, I feel more secure knowing that my dogs are crated when I'm gone. Because I don't have to think about like, what if today they did this or this or that. Dogs are unpredictable sometimes, you know, you don't know what they're gonna do.
My biggest thing, especially with like puppies or younger dogs or new dogs that are coming into the household, is when they're getting into stuff when you're leaving, right? People always say, you know, I try and crate him when I leave, but he freaks out and he barks and he does all this stuff. So like I just stopped crating him, but then he's tearing into stuff, he's getting into the trash. And my biggest fear with what I tell clients is you, especially getting in the trash or something, you don't know what he's consumed, what he or she has consumed or anything. And, you know, that's much scarier than me just having this guilt of like, oh, well, my dog's in the crate for 5-8 hours, whatever, like while I'm at work. So it's something where, you know, the pros and the cons just don't.
Oh yeah, for sure. And you're setting up the dog. So like Snoop, he's 2 at this point, and literally never, ever, ever had or was given the opportunity to be a dog who got into things.
Right.
Because he was crated, or I was heavily watching him. And so he just does it. At this point.
A possibility.
Yeah, he just does it. You know what I mean? So like, I think that that's a huge piece of it too, is that you're allowing your dog to explore and rehearse these behaviors that you don't want them to be able to, and you can't put a stop to it because you're not there, and you're not removing the option. And so then you're just setting them up to be the dog for the rest of their life, that they're like, I know in the back of my head that is something I can do. Where if they've never done it and they've never had the option, most likely it doesn't even run through Snoop's head to be like, oh, maybe I could go like snoop around in that, pun not intended, snoop around in that closet and see what I can find. You know what I mean? Just like stuff like that.
And again, it comes to those things where it's like these little wins that we're allowing these dogs to have. You know, if you let them go and sneak around, and they find out, oh, this trash can smells good, whatever. You know, they get accustomed. They get that routine of like, all right, well, I just have to wait for mom to leave or dad to leave, and then I can go and get it. You know, and same with like the crates. It's just like if you're gonna let them sleep in your bed for the first week or two, and then you try to do it, it's like, no, they've gotten used to that, right? And then they bark and they cry and whatever, and you feel bad, so you let them out. Again, it's just that association of like, well, that's all I have to do. Perfect. I'm just gonna do that every single time.
People will view the crate, like I just spoke to somebody, like a friend of a friend, about dog training, and they're like, the dog will not leave me alone. Like when I'm watching TV at night, constantly barking, biting, and I was like, why don't you crate the dog? Just like, isn't that a punishment to crate your dog? And people will view the crate as a punishment tool, and it's not, and it shouldn't.
It should not.
No, it's not. And that's if you are using it as a punishment, that is what's going to create the association to where your dog doesn't want to be there.
You're like screaming at them, you're like, get in your crate, Fluffy! And you slam the door behind them. You always use it when your dog is getting into something because you're not taking the time to supervise them, and then you're getting mad at them for being a dog. The
crate is meant to be proactive, not reactive. We're not waiting till the dog does something wrong and then grabbing them and putting them in the crate and being like, bad dog. No. They should have been in the crate beforehand. They shouldn't have even had the opportunity to do that. And then as far as like the actual steps of like teaching crate training, I think we've now discussed like why it's important and the associations you want to create around it. I think the biggest step that people skip is the dog being able to be in there with the door open and not coming out without permission. That to me is the step that will make or break how successful your crate training is, because a big piece, and especially if you're dealing with a dog who has separation anxiety or things like that, as soon as you add a physical block to get to you, if the dog is not mentally prepared to be isolated, then when you physically isolate them, panic. Panic is going to ensue.
Nobody wants to see that.
No, so it's like if you run drills where you're teaching your dog that they have to stay in the crate even with the door open, and teaching it almost more of like a bed command or like a place command, where it's teaching more mental impulse control than like put them in and quick close the door so that they can't get out. You're gonna have a lot more success because the dog is mentally learning how to separate and be isolated.
Not have to be with you all the time. People also miss crating when you're home. Like you only use the crate when you go out or when you're not present. And the biggest step is you have to crate your dog when you're home for a couple hours. Especially a puppy. And like you spoke about with Snoop, I don't know if Snoop ever went through the phase, but Pipsqueak did, where there's a lot of screaming and vocalization in the crate. And it was quite hard. There are times where I was like, I want this to stop, so I want to let her out. But if she's screaming and crying and getting worked up, she's realizing that's my ticket to get out of the crate.
Absolutely. Snoop did that one time. So he was honestly a very easy, he's been a really, all things considered, a very easy dog to train. I don't know if maybe I'm just really good at it, or if he's just a really easy dog. I think he's just a really easy dog. But he did scream in the crate and had like a full meltdown one time. And it was because there was a lot happening. There was a lot of excitement. my other dogs, all three of my other dogs were like running to the door to go outside. I think I was having somebody that was coming over. Like, it was just a lot going on. And he's in there and he's just like, he's just screaming. And he even launched forward and he bit the front of the door. And he's just in a wire kennel at home. And I will be perfectly honest, I kicked it.
Yeah.
He launched forward, he bit the door, I kicked the door, and he went back, and he just sat in the corner like this. And then I came back like 30 seconds later, and he was dead asleep. Just dead asleep in the back of the kennel. And ever since then, he was like, well, that obviously is not acceptable. I can't do that. And I'm not saying that everyone should kick their dog's kennel if they're having a meltdown, but in that moment, I was like, what is going on? Like, this is not
insane.
Just that crush.
Audacious.
Well, because it's almost like those scenes in the movies where someone's having a panic attack and they just like slap them.
Yeah.
It's obviously comedic and it's hyperbole and all this kind of stuff, but it's like, it's when they're slapping them, it's not with the intention of like harming them. They're not angry. They just are like, snap out of it.
Yeah.
Like, what is going on?
Focus on what's actually happening.
Exactly, and that's kind of what that was for Snoop. Like, I didn't kick him or anything like that, but it was just like I hit the front of the kennel with my foot, and he was just like, what? You know, it just like popped him out of this weird cycle that he was in of just panic.
Kind of interrupt the cycle of that, that panic. And
it's like a bonking, but just for the kennel. And I've had some clients that I've had do that with their puppies who have weird panic moments in the kennel, and it works amazingly.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It just interrupts it. It says like, excuse me, like, let's just calm down for a second. And it can be very, very effective.
I think, especially with the puppies too, I think people have this idea that like puppies are go, all like 24/7 stuff. They nap so much.
Like, I think they sleep like 20 hours a day.
Yeah. So it's something that it's just like you were saying, like, I think it's super, super important to crate at home, like when you're home as well. And it's something where it's like, well, aren't they going to be stressed out? Aren't they going to be panicking and stuff like that? It's like, maybe for like a little bit, you know, when you're first trying to teach them, it's new, whatever, they're starting to get used to it. But they're gonna relax and they're gonna pass out. It's exhausting to be stressed.
Oh,
Like it's gonna be something that it's, again, kind of like teaching a baby to sleep and stuff by itself. You know, it's just something where it's like, sometimes you gotta let them just cry it out, you know, and just let them kind of like realize, okay, you're not gonna die. You're totally fine. You're safe. You know, just calm down, take a deep breath, relax, take a nap if you want to. You know, and then when you wake up, I'll let you out. You know, that'll be it. You know, so I think that's something else. And then with people leaving too, you know, they always want to crate their dog only when they leave. And again, I think that associates something with like that separation anxiety as well, where it's like kind of what you were saying, like similar, I think, with like, there's a reaction to it, you know, it's I'm putting you there because I'm leaving.
Exactly.
Because I know you're going to freak out and everything, and I'm leaving, you're going to be stuck in there, right?
Yeah, it's you're classically conditioning.
Yes.
Going in the crate means we're gone.
Yeah.
You know, and then the dog is going to have a meltdown because of that.
And it's something where it's like, if you are using e-collars and stuff like that, obviously you're not correcting. You're not going to be able to correct it. You put them in the crate when they're there, you're able to correct for all that stuff. You know what I mean?
If you're dealing with like an older dog at the age that is working on an e-collar, you certainly can correct for like, I would say like physical things in the crate.
Yeah.
So like biting, clawing, stuff like that is very like, easy to pinpoint, you know?
And the reason I get on that stuff is because it's potentially harmful for them. That's the only time they're going to hurt themselves. They get their like paw stuck in the metal, or if they like, some dogs I know have like chewed the metal bars off and stuff like that. It's like, you can't let that happen. You know what I mean? So it's like, be there for them, teach them that, hey, just don't do that. I don't care if you bark, I don't care if you whine, whatever, we can get through that, we can work on that. But if you're actually potentially physically harming yourself, I have to step in and correct for that.
Oh yeah, for sure. And again, even in those cases, like, yes, you can directly address those behaviors and correct for them, but then I would also like look at the whole picture of the whole of like, how is this person utilizing the crate? what training have they actually done?
Right.
You know, like what things do we need to like maybe take a few steps back on and do a few other drills kind of leading up to that stuff.
That's very true.
Because the whole process may have been one of those like open the door, shove the dog in, close the door type of thing. And utilizing a crate that's going to be safe for your dog is important. Some dogs do fine in wire crates. I'd say that's pretty few and far between though.
Yes.
Some dogs are going to benefit way more from like a more enclosed crate where they don't see as much all the time. Because like with a wire crate, you could put something over top of it to enclose it a bit, but again, you have to know whether your dog is the type that would pull that through, chew it up, potentially strangle themselves, all those scary things. So getting like more of like an airline style crate or like a Roughland or even an Impact if you needed something that heavy duty, but making sure that you're taking the steps to like safely putting your dog in the crate too.
Yeah, and potty training and crate training like go hand in hand, and like I would say it's extremely difficult to potty train without crate training.
I would say it's impossible.
Yeah.
I would even go as far as to say it's impossible. Unless you are home 100% of the time for the first 8 to 10 months of a dog's life, I don't think you could potty train without a crate.
And you deserve a break from your dog. It's not supposed to be you're with your dog 24/7 and you're not mean or nasty for crating your dog. You're setting yourself up for success. So when you do crate them, you're working from home, you have friends over, you have the ability to separate yourself from your dog.
Yeah.
There are times when I get home from maybe running errands, grocery store, or whatever, and I just won't let my dogs out for like an hour.
I said that in a TikTok comment one time, and people exploded.
Oh yeah, they like lost. I'm sure people would like think that's terrible.
There's days of my days off where I need a mental rest, and it's not all about the dogs. And they have crate days, like they're not in the crate for 10 hours or anything, but 5 hours on, we go potty, we go for a walk, they go back in their crates, and that's perfectly acceptable.
Yeah,
not all the time. I could do it if I wanted to, but I don't do it all the time.
Yeah. Well, it's like, and guess what? They're calm. My dogs don't care.
Yeah.
When I get home, they know that they're just in there. Like, they don't cause a fuss. They don't freak out. They don't bark. They don't get overexcited. Because again, I've never created an atmosphere of my dogs being excited to see me when I get home. That would probably break a lot of people's hearts, but for me, I don't want that.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want you feeling like there's more value when I'm here versus when I'm not here, because that creates that need to be with you all the time. I want my dogs being calm when I come home.
Yeah.
And just not caring.
Yeah.
And my shepherd did struggle with that for a while when he was younger. And it's funny because there's even been times where my husband, like if I go to work and I leave my shepherd home or I go somewhere and don't take him, whatever, Tom will be like, I didn't even realize he was home for like an hour. Because like he doesn't make a peep. Because he has learned so intensely that making noise is the last way he's ever gonna get out of the kennel. Because there were times I would come home when he was young, and I mean, he'd be doing like backflips, going crazy, and he'd be stuck in there for 2 hours, and I wouldn't even look at him until he finally calmed down. And so now he's like, we don't move. We wait and we wait and we wait until she finally lets us out.
There's like an idea that you have to make saying goodbye and hello to your dog like this big production.
Dogs don't do that. They don't say goodbye and hello to each other.
So people will be like, oh, baby, I'm so sorry, I'm gonna put you in the crate, and like opening the door and looking at them again, you're like, oh my gosh. And just leave. When you come home, come home and ignore your dogs for 15 minutes to an hour, whatever you feel, until they're a little bit calmer.
Well, and I think going back to like how maybe this ties into the societal expectations of things is like there's this such a heavy push on like dogs needing to be like your entire personality trait. Like your dogs are the love of your life and you just want the best for them and you spend all this money on them and you do, oh, I can't go, I have to hang out with my dog, oh, I have to leave, I have to go home to my dog. Like it's like this trendy thing to be obsessed with your dog. and prioritize them over like everything else. And it's like there's nothing wrong with loving your dogs and like wanting to spend time with them and everything, but it is becoming a problem when then in turn when there's like normal, level-headed, common sense people like us that are just like, okay, so I crate my dogs, so I correct my dogs, so I don't have my entire world revolve around my dogs. We're like a villain.
Yeah.
Somehow.
And that's what I was gonna say too. I think a lot of people they struggle with the fact that it's like their life kind of changes because of their dog, because they have to get back because they don't crate them because they're going nuts, so they have to leave them out. But they know they're gonna get into something, so it's just like a matter. It's like such a stress where it's like, well, I have to get back and do all this stuff. It's like, yeah, I think it's something where again, just creating helps a lot with those things.
And recognizing that like it's okay if your dog isn't 100% happy all the time.
Yeah. It's like
they're gonna be okay.
Like you're not supposed to be 100% happy all the time. And it's like biologically a survival tactic that when we feel upset or depressed or angry, like we're always like, how do I fix this? And sometimes you just have to ride in tough moments, and your dog does too. Like it's impossible for any living being to be 100% happy all the time.
Also overwhelming your dog with that like affection and everything, not normal. So it leads to a whole lot of other problems where they kind of lose their independence and their confidence, and then they are depending on that owner to do everything for them. When they go on walks, they have to be like stuck on them or like hiding or whatever. When they meet dogs, you know, then they resource guard their owners, and it's this whole thing where it's just like, then they start to think that they can't survive without the owner, and that is so unhealthy. They need to be by themselves.
And that's, like, intention behind it is never ill. Like, people aren't trying to create dogs that can't be alone. They just think they're doing right by their dog by constantly giving attention, and you're creating an emotionally unstable dog, and you're having an emotionally unhealthy relationship with your dog.
I don't think it's like,
well, I think
trying
it's,
to cause problems, but
no, and I think it just stems from, again, that pressure of like prioritizing your dog's happiness over everything else. And it's like, no, I don't need to do that, and I won't do it because it's not healthy for them or for me. I mean, you're gonna get burnt out. I mean, no one's ever gonna tell you that prioritizing like your partner's happiness over everything else would ever be healthy. You know, so like doing that for a dog, certainly not the best option at all. So I think that, and so in the realm of like how we're interacting with our dogs and everything, I think it's important to look at things like very common sense and level-headed, rather than letting the internet like heavily influence, or even society's like weird cookie cutter expectation influence like what your dog should be like, how you should be with your dog, what the interaction should be like, what it should look like in public for them, like things like that. Because the other part of the topic, do you guys have anything else you want to add on crate training?
Crate train your dog.
With the topic of like the pressures of like other people, like it can be really difficult to have a dog that isn't super 100% bomb-proof, friendly all the time. And unfortunately, it can be really taxing because it feels really isolating, and you feel like very like alone, I think, a lot of times, because you feel like you're the only person that has this like terrible dog who just like doesn't like people, or doesn't like dogs, or doesn't like kids, or you know, whatever it might be. When in reality, I would say like most dogs probably don't like something. It's probably just a matter of you maybe have gotten the dog that has a lower threshold to tolerate things, and they're more willing to stand up for themselves and assert themselves on things that they don't like, whereas maybe your friends' dogs will just put up with it. You know what I mean? And even give you all the signs they're uncomfortable other than aggression. And so very clearly they must be okay with it.
It's a lot of like, you know, compare and contrast. Like, why isn't my dog like my aunt's dog who's a golden retriever energy and can
Yeah.
kiss everybody and say hi to people and can be the party pleaser. And then people have these dogs that they're like, I can't have strangers come up to my dog and they're like, I hate this.
Yeah.
Like, my dog should be able to tolerate whatever, whenever, anything that I want my dog to do. And it's just like, you have to take a step back and be like, that's not the dog you have.
Yeah.
Whether genetically or...
It's a hard pill to swallow for
Yeah.
some people, but it's, I mean, it is what it is, you know?
And do you think that people would have like as much of a problem accepting that their dog is like that if there wasn't this weird overarching lurking like this is how dogs are supposed to be, like stereotype that is like pushed on us? Because the culture in America with our dogs is absurdly different than anywhere else in the world. Like the amount of time, like countries that I've gone to in Europe, like the way that they live with their dogs is so different.
Yeah.
Dogs are more, it's weird because it's more dog friendly. Like dogs are heavily included in everything and go everywhere with everyone, but they're not like, but they're just like, they're there. Like nobody's paying attention to them. Like all the like restaurants I went to, I was in like a 5-star restaurant and there was like 10 dogs underneath people's tables.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it was just like, they were there, and then everywhere in the streets, they're off leash, just walking around with their owners. And there was a woman walking with her off leash dog who was like 10 feet behind her, just like trotting along. She's not even paying attention, right next to the street. The dog's just going, nobody's even looking at it. You know what I mean? Like just, they're just there.
Yeah.
They're not like a spectacle.
Right. Whereas here, I
can't go anywhere.
I think the biggest things that I find with like certain people that they get like kind of down on themselves is you go out, take your dog out to a patio or something or whatever, Lakewood Truck Park, whatever, right? Everyone's dog has to go say hi to every other dog and do all this stuff, and God forbid you say, no, I'm just hanging out with my dog and just we're doing our own thing. We don't want other dogs coming out, right? They like get so offended sometimes, you know, and then there's nothing wrong with that, but I think that's one thing that a lot of people kind of like assume like, oh, your dog just must be terrible then. If I can't even come say hi to it, or if my dog can't come say hi to it, it's like, no, I just, maybe he doesn't like it, maybe I just don't want you to come over. But either way,
start a conversation.
It's like either way, no. Like it's okay to say that, you know?
I think it stems from like, it's like shameful to have a dog who like isn't nice.
Yes.
You know, like it's embarrassing for people to have a dog who isn't nice.
Yeah. I definitely felt that like with Nelson in particular, like he used to not be very nice. And I wanted him to be nice so bad. And I'd take him to like apartment dog parties, and that was a lot of when I couldn't feel like I advocated because I was just very young and didn't know. People would get in his face all the time, and he had multiple bite records. And I've since learned like Nelson's away, and Nelson is not allowed to say hi to people. And I could very much correct that, and I have. But why am I going to put him in a position where he's uncomfortable and he responds with aggression? That's not something that I want to push him toward or force him to feel uncomfortable.
And that kind of comes back to kind of what we were saying too. It's like, in your eyes, you're thinking, I want him to be nice, so exposing him to these things is what's going to help. Where in reality, it was probably just stressing him out more because it was just probably the way that you were going about it, you know? Like I'm sure if you did it when he was younger and had a better insight on it like you do now, then it's something you could have smaller groups or just go and sit in the corner and observe, you know, don't have to be like in everyone's face and all that stuff. You know, maybe it could have been different, but...
Yeah, he's certainly my problem child, and I am happy to admit that there was a time where I was very ignorant about dogs, and I was like a teenager, and the situations that I put him in, I would never dream of putting even my most friendly dog in those situations. And you're right, I wanted to expose him, and I thought the more I expose him, he's going to be able to tolerate these things. And what I needed to do in the moment is just not put him in positions that he was being pushed upon. I could still have him out in public and have him sitting and doing it down and behaving, But I needed to draw the line when people are like, oh, a little chihuahua. Get right in his face, and that's when he responded negatively.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, and with stuff like that, like I have a client who we worked a lot, I would say. It's probably been about a year. Maybe, probably about a year, a little bit less maybe, that she finished her training and her dog had some reactivity, all just like nervousness and anxiety stuff towards other dogs and people occasionally. And we got to like a really, really good spot. And then I was calling to check in, and she basically said that, there were certain situations that it was starting to come back up again, or, stuff. So we met and did like a follow-up. And it was kind of one of those where, because things had gotten so good, we stopped doing the things that made it so good. And so then it just reverted back, to kind of where we started. And a lot of it from her, I think, stemmed from, through our conversation, that, again, that pressure and that kind of embarrassment of like, I don't want to be the only person in the group that can't let my dog go say hi to everybody, or I don't want to like continually go to this coffee shop and tell this same person like, no, for the 5th time you can't pet my dog, when we come in here, or like stuff like that. And so it just kind of like slipped a little bit over time. Or I think something too that can happen is if you have a dog who's kind of like inconsistent, or like sometimes they like people, sometimes they don't like people, we allow the dog to break the rules when they like someone. Because we're like, oh, but they finally like someone.
And the dog is getting to decide who they approve of versus who they disapprove of, which was my case with Nelson, which makes things so confusing, because you're like, they like this person now, I can let them say hi to everybody, and then they end up biting someone, you're like,
well, because it's your dog, basically, like, say you tell your dog to sit because someone's approaching or whatever, and you're not sure if they're gonna like the person, and the person gets closer and your dog is showing signs that like, oh, I'm actually excited to see them, like I want to say hi, and your dog breaks their sit and goes over and says hi, and the person's petting them and everything's great, that's still not okay, because now we're showing our dog that you have the authority to decide if you like someone, you can approach them friendly, but what happens if they don't like somebody? Then they're going to lunch.
It's the pendulum swinging. Like if it swings in the positive way, people are, that's great. And then when it swings the opposite way, people are like, this is awful and I hate this, and now my dog's uncontrollable. So you have to have that balance, whether your dog is interacting positively with someone or negatively with someone. There's things that they cannot do, and I will not tolerate.
You still have to hold them accountable for whatever boundaries you're putting in place, and take that responsibility back from them. Of like, you don't get to decide that you can just go approach somebody or go say hi. But I think a lot of that stems from like, one, maybe your underlying desire of like, I really want my dog to be friendly, but then also that desire of like, I don't want to make this awkward for this person by correcting my dog and then calling them back over and then sitting them and then going through this whole thing. And I think some of that we just, yes, it's unfortunate that society's created a space where it's difficult and embarrassing at times to like have to do that, but like you just have to do it. I mean, there's no other option really.
I remember when I first when we were first like starting to train Sully and stuff, we were out somewhere and I was kind of worried of the conflict as well, kind of advocating for our training and stuff, because it was like right when we first started training, so he was still obviously very much a puppy and very much in that kind of positive wanting to go say hi to everyone. And someone came up and asked like if they could pet the dog, and I told them no, and then they asked me like, why would you even bring a dog here then? And I was like, and it like crushed me, because I was like, oh my God, like what am I doing wrong? Like what, and it just like through loop, it made me like angry, like that they would say something like that. And then it also like, I'm like, am I like doing something wrong by doing that? And so, and it was just in a public place. It wasn't even like at a place or anything, but,
people are rude.
And I was just like, and now I think about it, and I wish I would have been like, well, because I can't.
Or you to think you can touch every dog that you see.
A lot of entitlement and reactive dog owners or other dogs that aren't maybe necessarily friendly deserve to enjoy a public setting without feeling like they have to allow you to pet their dogs. Like, you are not entitled to pet anybody's dog just because it's cute. Like, I have the power to tell you no.
And I feel like it would be, I don't know how the culture here started in that way and got like so bad with the entitlement that we all have with other people's dogs. But it would remove so much difficulty if it wasn't that way. Because it would alleviate so much weird owner guilt of like, oh man, like I own this dog that like is causing all of these problems and things like that. Well, if nobody was trying to interact with your dog nonstop everywhere you went, there wouldn't be problems. You know, your dog would be perfectly fine.
Just like learning, frankly, to not give a fuck about other people's feelings, in the sense, like, I don't care about a stranger's feelings. If I tell a child they cannot pet my dog, like, I'm sorry. I'm not even sorry.
No,
you just can't pet my dog, and
you can't.
I
was at a store once that I had Lumos like in a down while I was like picking things out. It was a pet store, and a girl came up at the end of the aisle and was like, "Oh, he's so pretty. Can I take a picture?" And I said, "Sure." And then I'm like looking at stuff, and then she like takes her picture, and then she just wants to walk. She starts walking right over to him with her hands out, and I looked at her and I said, "Well, you can't pet him." And she just kind of like stopped in her tracks and like looked real like embarrassed. And I was like, I mean, you can take a picture, but like you didn't ask if you could touch him. You said you can't touch him. And she was like, oh, okay. And then she like backed up, and then she was like, I'll just, now he's looking at me weird. I'll just go. Meanwhile, his expression hasn't changed at all. You know what I mean? I was like, it's just there. But yeah, so it's just stuff like that where it's like, it didn't have to be weird. It didn't have to be weird. Just don't try to touch everyone's dog.
I would have said no. It's like,
I'll be, you know, if I need to be the mean lady that makes people question, like, or feel so embarrassed that they were going to touch somebody's dog without permission so that they never want to do that again because they got so embarrassed, I'll do that for you. I'll be that person. I will make them feel so uncomfortable. Because you should always ask. At least ask.
Well, that's what's crazy is doing this for as many years and stuff, like going up around the park with like all those kids at the school and going to Edgewood and stuff. Young kids and like toddlers have better manners than adults.
It's just weird.
Like it's insane, you know? You go to Home Depot and you get people that are just kind of like putting their hands out and petting these dogs, but then you go up to a school and there's like 50 kids and they all ask, and I say no to all of them, but at least they ask. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Well, didn't you have that one terrible experience at the park the other day?
Yeah.
The lady was like, you can't tell my kid what dog they can and can't pet.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah, I was with a very, I don't want to say aggressive, but fear-aggressive dog that had trouble with being approached. And this little snot-nosed child came up and was like, her tongue out, and she was like walking through the dog, and I was like,
zombie,
no petting. And her mother was like, don't tell my child who they can pet, my dog can pet, or my child can pet your dog if they want. And I was like, ma'am, it's a safety issue. I'm not going to allow your child to pet the dog. And I kind of kept walking, and she's carrying on. And I was like,
do you want your child to be disfigured for the rest of their life?
And like, well, could look at that and be like, well, why would you even take your dog to the park if you can't control him? Like, I am controlling it. I'm controlling the situation.
It's a public space.
And the dog deserves to be at a park in a public setting and enjoy that if I'm able to advocate for their
because the dog did nothing wrong.
I mean, if I'm out in public and somebody comes up and touches me and I don't want them to, I can literally charge them with assault. Like, literally any unwanted physical interaction. Like, you can't just walk up to a person and interact with them and touch them and do all this kind of stuff without their permission. Like, what makes you think that you could do that to an animal? Like,
who very, as people, you can be like, hey, that's weird, back off. Dogs are just gonna bite you.
Exactly. And to put your children in that position is like beyond me. I don't understand that. But I think that overall, like, yes, the culture in America surrounding dogs and dog ownership, it needs a lot of adjustments. A lot of things need to improve. I think that the only way they will improve, though, is if people, like you said, just stop giving a fuck about what other people think and starting to assert yourself and set the boundaries for your own dog, and don't be apologetic about it. This is how it is. This is how I'm going to live my life with my dog. And you can only educate people as much as you can, like, along the way.
Yeah.
You know, like, if I have an interaction with somebody and they look like offended that I said you can't pet my dog, I'll be like, you know, it's nice that you asked, I appreciate it, but like, some dogs just don't want to be pet, man. You know, like, just little things like that you can kind of communicate with people, and it puts a whole new perspective. Like, my client that had to come back in for the follow-up, she even said, she's like, ever since owning this dog, I look at other people and when I'm out in public, like, I don't ask to touch other people's dogs. Like, I don't put them in that weird position because I know how much I hate it. So I look at things totally differently. She's like, whereas before owning a dog like this, like, I was that person. I was like, puppy, dog, you know, I just wanted to see all of them. So sometimes
that's changed for me even too.
I was guilty of that as well. I was like, oh, puppy, I'm
you guys see me with my dogs, you know, it's like, I very much is like that, but it's like, but now, it's very clear. It's just like, just don't do it.
Just don't do it.
Respect the dog as a being, and that it's not a toy to pass around. It's not an object for you to pet and interact with.
It's not an accessory.
No.
Right.
No, not at all.
Just be confident.
Don't second guess yourself. It's okay to tell people no. It's a good lesson overall.
Yes, it's a very good lesson overall.
It's a hard lesson, but it's a good lesson.
Some people are better at it than others, but you know, if your dog needs that from you, then don't feel bad about doing it.
And that's the way I always tell people to think about it. It's like, just remember that you're speaking for them. The dog can't speak, right? The dog can react, but you don't want that to happen. So speak for your dog before they have a chance to react.
Before they speak for themselves, and then you don't like the result. Of them speaking for themselves.
There's even value in, like, practicing it. I've had clients that are like, if they're very uncomfortable telling people that they, like, can't touch their dog, we literally practice it. I come up and I'm like, oh my gosh, a puppy! And I tell them exactly what to do. I'm like, you step in front of your dog and you say, stop, please don't pet my dog. And we literally run drills of it. Because the more that they verbalize that, and the more that becomes routine and, like, second nature to them, the more likely they're going to be confident doing it in, like, a real life scenario. So. And
it is crazy. It was just like, at Edgewater and stuff, sometimes walking with clients, and clients will have the interaction, I'll diffuse it or whatever. The clients are like, oh my gosh, how did you do that?
People are like, oh, you can tell people no.
No, I almost every time I go, I have to step in and be like, no, thank you, we're training right now. And I think if anything, like, it's good for clients to see us do that and feel more confident that, like, oh, like, that didn't go as badly as I thought it would go. I feel a little better about doing it next time.
Absolutely.
But for all you people out there with dogs that aren't societally perfect, it's fine.
It's okay.
Don't worry about it. They'll be okay.
You'll be okay. Ask your questions.
Love the dog that you have and live a life that is going to be fulfilling for them.
Absolutely.
Cool.
Until next time.
Thanks for hanging out with us.
Yes.
Bye.